Hey guys, welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Arc Raiders. We have a lot to talk about today. As of right now, we're praying that either on Monday or Tuesday, more likely Tuesday, we're going to get the next update. And we're praying that means the data mine toxic swamp map condition for damn battlegrounds, or with it other new content of any kind, whether that's new items, maybe tied to the swamp, or just, a continued balance patch, since the one they promised did involve the sticher being nerfed, and yet that wasn't in the 1.11 patch. So, we're hoping for more of that sort of aspect. And the whole 2026 roadmap is overdue, with promises online that it's coming very soon. They've also responded a bit to the idea of high tier gear being something they don't want to buff or they need to be really careful about. So there's a lot going on. What is going on? What can we expect? Let's talk about it. First up, it was revealed this week that, they've sold over 12 million copies, which is awesome. And then everyone got a free golden hammer, the pickaxe, if you log into the game and have been playing the game anytime since launch. So pretty cool, awesome to see something like that. Games Radar spoke with the design lead for the game, and he talked about how it's actually a mix of more pressure because huge audience, and also yes, relief because the game worked out. While it's awesome that it's so successful and they're obviously very happy, they feel the appetite is there from the player base, so that gives them a reason to push to keep building and keep doing stuff for this player base. He goes on to say that they're doing what they can to build up the team and reorganize it to support areas they now know more about. Now they've had more time since launch to present day, they can see what's working and what isn't, what the players are actually enjoying and where they can make the improvements on. So very promising, let's see it. Now, alongside that, we had the event for the winter and cold snap and all that actually end, and they put out this stat page to look at. So you can see that 95 million snowballs were thrown, which is cool. 91 raiders were knocked out by snowballs, so quite the difference there. Over 10,000 arc were taken down with snowballs, which is also a surprisingly small number, with 108 raiders playing an instrument for 20 minutes without stopping. Fascinating. When are we going to get those instrument blueprints? Obviously, it was a popular event, went down well, and I think seasonal events of this nature are really fun. Will the potential swamp event be that? I'm not certain really. That seems like more of a map-specific event rather than across many maps, but we'll see if they do something for spring. Speaking of the whole toxic swamp thing, this was something that was data mined with the 1.7.2 patch alongside other things that turned out to be true, such as the return of the hidden bunker map condition. There isn't any real information about it other than the fact that you've got the swamp, obviously on damn battlegrounds, and so a map event for damn battlegrounds is kind of overdue. More specific stuff for that one. We have awesome variety for Spaceball, we got one on Blue Gate, more for the other maps like damn battlegrounds, Bird City, and of course Stellamontis would be cool. According to the data mine, it's going to happen on the 19th of January. So that's why we think it's possible on Monday if it's not happening actually on the Tuesday. What we could expect though is that toxic swamp to basically make that swamp area much harder to exist in. Kind of like the whole cold snap meant you needed to go into buildings to survive or use other tools. Maybe we'll need to do that. Maybe we'll have a new gas mask item. Maybe we'll have craftables to give you a buff temporarily while you're in there. What will actually be there will hopefully changes to the arc and their behavior within. It does feel more like a nature threat though, doesn't it? Like the swamp itself. Maybe you have to move really slowly through it, but obviously there must be a reason to go there. There must be rewards. I would easily see that just as high value loot, high currency or whatever. Maybe great weapons are spawning there. Entirely new blueprints or a new source of blueprints that we really want. Say you can get a Tempest blueprint there really consistently and people will be fighting heavily for it. So obviously they're going to do something to get us to engage with it. Hopefully it's something special, if not completely new. They did a great job with the Stellamontis update, introducing new utility at the same time, such as the sea grenades, which have turned out to be really fun for dealing with rocketeers or killing, say, a surveyor from really long distance when it exposes itself with blue light. Or trailblazers, not that great in PvP because they're quite hard to land, but they do hurt when they do land. But to be fair, they're absolutely incredible for taking down ground arc. So I trust them to create new and effective utility, and if they were going to do it in a swamp related thing, well then this would be the time. Now we are expecting a balance patch continuation from this update, whether it's Monday, Tuesday, or whatever. We can speculate this is happening because of the sticher nerf that was promised that simply didn't come in the 1.11 patch. Meanwhile, the kettle and trigger nade did. For the kettle, they just capped the fire rate to a lower point, right? They claim that people were literally not reaching that fire rate without the macro. So it's less of a nerf and more of a macro fix, and normal players going to feel the same using it. Trigger nade changes though, that was amazing. The changes to how long it takes to actually pop it and the explosion radius and the damage fall off. It was hit in a variety of ways but still remains quite accessible from the craft. So now you can't really hit someone with it even if you land it at their feet because they can easily react by sprinting away and outranging the explosion. Now it requires you to catch someone off guard, stick them directly, or just use some clever replacement, surprise someone with it, which is a lot better than free damage that it was before. The whole distance aspect also means if you react at least a bit, you can reduce the damage. So for a tiny balance patch, it did a good job, but we definitely still need a bigger one. I'm still hoping for major improvements to your epic weapons, but any changes to the balance of the weapons, like the ultra budget weapons, should be less commonly good relative to everything despite their tiny investment by comparison to epics. But in an interview, they acknowledge that they're scared of, well, doing something like that. Again, from the Games Radar interview, Embark apparently agree that the balance of cost versus the benefit is hard to justify right now, so they're aware of it. But Watkins said that any given weapon in capable hands should be capable of winning a fight if you're playing smartly. We can all agree with that. That's not the issue. Watkins goes on to say then that I think we're definitely a bit off on some of the cost to benefit ratios, certainly on the higher tier weapons. It was trying to follow a curve of by spending more and more money, you're gaining an edge. Not like a clear one, so never I'm using a purple weapon therefore I win. We don't want that. Which yeah, we can agree with, sure. A Stitcher should be able to take on a bobcat, but only if they're playing carefully around cover. They're tracking, say, the high fire rate and pushing them when the player's reloading. Watkins explained in that conversation that costs should not inherently fill a skill gap or tactical awareness gap, otherwise players could just grind their way to victory. So yeah, they're being very careful about the purple weapons. They don't want them to be noticeably stronger than everything else. Fair enough, but that's why I keep banging on about like the durability thing. At least if you're using an epic weapon, you never have to repair it, so upgrading it is worth it because you never have to invest in that weapon again, compared to heavily having to repair your busted up common and uncommon weapons. That would make sense to me. We'll have to see what they choose to do. At the very least, he specifically said they're probably going to make the cost-benefit ratio feel better, certainly on the high end, going on to say that if it makes sense to buff a weapon to live up to the implied potential, then that's what they'll do, but also if it makes sense to drop the rarity of the weapon so it stays where it's meant to be because it's performing that role well, then they'll do that too. So it's not completely off the table, guys, that they could take like a bobcat and change it from an epic weapon to like a rare one or something. And then that would adjust what you actually have to do to craft it and upgrade it as well. At least in theory, they're considering that. Now in terms of the future, I want to talk about the roadmap stuff. Again, maybe Monday, Tuesday, we'll get that roadmap reveal at the same time, hopefully. Initially, this came to my attention by this Twitter post by this account Arc Raider Alerts, where they fantastically didn't provide a source for any of this information. They claim that the 2026 roadmap is coming soon, and that their 2026 strategy is multiple new maps, weapons, objectives, and enemies that are going to be parceled out across the year. There'll also be thematic updates to focus on thematic cohesion, grouping of items and enemies and maps to create distinct gameplay experiences. So Stella Montis was a completely unique map compared to others, and we had shredders there. So I expect new maps, new arc that are only on those maps that are sort of like designed to be in those locations. Map scaling. Devs are aiming for a variety in the sizes and density of the maps. So Spacepot's currently the largest map, as you probably knew. But it sounds interesting. Imagine a really vertical map, or, you know, much smaller maps in general, with less players on it at the same time. New mechanics are going to come. So we got new unique conditions, weather effects, and exclusive enemy types such as the shredder to keep gameplay fresh. They also mentioned strategic depth. New content is designed to make players rethink the loadouts and use existing gadgets like mines and zip lines in new ways. That's interesting. Could be new enemy types that are like vulnerable to certain things. The idea that we use zips to get on top of like bigger arc and put mines on top of them, right? But I like the idea of a map that requires that kind of mobility to actually exist and get across it. Cool idea. Anyway, no source for that makes it really hard to believe, but I believe it actually came from an interview with Games Radar as the source, as a lot of what we've drawn from today. It was Virgil Watkins again, the design lead, that said the line, "Sometime soon, I believe we're going to be putting out a chunk of a roadmap for the upcoming months. But right now, it's us kind of deciding exactly the cadence of that stuff. We're going to parcel that out across the coming year. So that's, yeah, definitely the source of that post from the Twitter account. It's interesting. They've definitely made promises, or at least different people from Mbak have said that they're going to really up the pace that they're putting new content out. Meanwhile, you've got the design lead, Virgil Watkins, saying they're currently deciding that stuff. He goes on to say that because of the way players are engaging and reacting things, they want to adapt to what makes sense for the current player base, which is a good thing. Adding a new map has its own novelty, a place to go do stuff, but what else? That's when they talk about the thematics and the gameplay side of things. How do the enemies and items there, the experiences in the map, point to something? They don't want it to be the whatever update came out for Arc Raiders. Let's check that out briefly. They want to create a template for the next months, maybe where they continue to update it. Watkins also confirmed in this conversation that there are going to be multiple maps coming this year across a spectrum of size to facilitate new types of gameplay. So some are definitely going to be smaller, but some are definitely going to be grander than what we even have now. So hopefully we get that roadmap very soon, and that's still interesting information to go with. But something that is a major issue right now still is exploiters and cheaters. We talked about this recently. There's been other changes, right, that have come in. The whole FOV and crazy settings that PC players were doing by messing with the console, that's now been disabled. They put in a hotfix where they removed the ability to do it, said it was never meant to be a player-facing feature. We also had this promise about cheaters too, with new detection for cheating coming in, new client-side fixes to address map exploiters, and anti-stream sniping tools. Now, while I can't say for sure about the anti-cheat stuff, changes have already happened for streamers. As you can see, AimKey, a prominent PvP streamer, has highlighted that people who constantly target him, queue into him, snipe his location, all that stuff, have finally been punished. Apparently, it was easy as just looking at, say, the code that's on screen when you're in a lobby, and then you can check your own code and see, am I in that streamer's lobby? Where are they? Let's go hunt them down. So it's good they finally got something. But on the other end, you have the whole wall exploit thing where people can go out of bounds, then shoot players that are still in bounds from the safety of behind a wall, which sucks. This popped up initially with Stellamontis, and it's still an issue there, by the way, but it's also become quite rampant on damn battlegrounds. This clip here isn't even a new one, but it happened yesterday as I made this video. Check out this other example, again from AimKey, on Stellamontis. They started to go after the losers that go into the walls and shoot players inside the map. This is what's just happening in your PvP lobbies now, which is completely out of hand. So I certainly expect the patch to come rolling in with that swamp update to also actually fix this out of bounds stuff in a major way, because it's quite a problem now. I also want to quickly mention at the end of the video here that the next expedition is going to be different. It was again thanks to the whole Watkins talk, where Virgil talked about the dark pattern that players were basically given to engage with the expedition. They want to further incentivize expeditions in the future in a much better way. He calls this one an experiment as the first wipe to see how players are engaged with to start over again. But with the first wipe all about, resetting your wealth and building up this massive amount of wealth before that, it meant the players weren't using their loot to meet the requirements. And a lot of people felt actually compelled to wipe, like they had to do it, which meant everyone's using their worst kits, minimal stuff, free kits, and just farming money and not really playing the game, which I feel is an obvious thing when you read what's necessary. Anyway, they've said straight up that that system will change as they continue to experiment with it. At the same time, they do want to be careful about the rewards and mechanics that you get from wiping. They don't want it to be a literal clear advantage over someone that's just started the game. Meanwhile, you've gone on the expedition 3 times. But specifically, he revealed that skill points will not be a reward every expedition. It's going to cap out at some point. But we don't know what rewards they're going to do to replace that. So don't expect 5 more skill points every wipe, to say the least. But yeah, there you have it. That's my overview of everything that's been happening this week. We're hoping for upcoming changes to be interesting. I'll be covering it all as it happens. So until then, I've been Hollow, you've been you, and thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.